Michigan's offensive line in 2024 was a unit that I would say was overhated. Now, the pass blocking wasn't good. Fair. But receiver talent wasn't great either. Quarterback was an atrocity. So really everything minus Colston Loveland and some of the other tight ends, such as Marlon Klein, was a disaster in the passing game. So to a certain degree, I can give some of that a pass. And as for Michigan's run blocking up front, it's pretty easy to stop the run when realistically you know your opponent cannot pass the ball. Or if they do, maybe they'll get a completion, maybe they'll form a drive on you, and maybe they'll even score, but also their passing could be so inept that they could throw it to one of your defenders. So I give Michigan's offensive line a ton of grace, with the understanding that the unit last year was not good enough to carry the team, to be the focal point of the team. The offense really didn't have a focal point all last year, minus Khalil Mullings and Colston Loveland. Those are the only real focal points of Michigan's 2024 offense. So in previewing this 2025 Michigan offensive line, I would say I like what they bring back. I like the talent they have. I think there is some potential with depth. However, I need to see improvements before I fully buy into this unit being elite. Before we resume this segment, please take a few seconds of your time to make sure you have liked the video, subscribe to the channel, hit the notification bell for the channel and for any team podcasts and playlists linked in the description, and also comment your thoughts down below in the comment section and join my Discord server via the description. All of those things I just asked you to do are completely free, and they sign you up for things related to my channel, or they don't sign you up for anything. No cost to you, and all the benefit to you because we release daily college football content here on College Football with Sam. If you want to support the channel monetarily, sign up for a YouTube membership, or check any other links in the description for my merchandise store and Patreon page. Thank you very much, and let's get back to the segment. I think a lot of Michigan fans, a lot of people that know this roster well, can understand that. Simply looking at the grades of these players and the amount of snaps that they return, Greg Crippen, for example, at a 61.1 PFF grade with 558 snaps. El-Hadi is the highest rated returning player with a 66.9 PFF grade with 744 snaps. I think he's the best player on the line. You have Nathan Afabi, who I think has locked down that right guard spot, only had 2 snaps all year, very inexperienced. Evan Link had a 50.5 PFF grade. He was one of the worst tackles in football, I think, early in the year. Towards the end of the year, he was still below average, but much improved, had 720 snaps. And Andrew Sprague is projected to be the starter at right tackle at a 63.9 PFF grade with 73 snaps, played significant time in the bowl game, and was, had some spot duty later in the season for 2024. This Michigan offensive line also has some important depth pieces that I think people should pay attention to. I love Brady Norton, Lawrence Hatter, Blake Frazier, and Andrew Babalola. Those are the backup guards and tackles for Michigan. Babalola was pushing Evan Link and Andrew Sprague in camp as a true freshman, so I'm pretty high on his future. And Brady Norton and Lawrence Hatter were great players at lower levels of football. Frazier was fairly highly recruited, redshirted last year. The unit's young, so I don't love the depth, but I do think it has some potential, and it's not the worst depth situation in the world. And the offensive line overall, you have an older interior, some younger players on the outside at tackle with, I would say, a high ceiling guy in Andrew Sprague. I'm curious to see how much this unit improves at pass blocking. I think that in run blocking, they should be pretty solid. If not good, perhaps could be great, especially on the interior. However, at tackle, Michigan was pretty disappointing last year. That's putting it kindly. And they're starting the same left tackle that they did last year when the unit was disappointing. Obviously, right tackle Miles Hinton went off to the NFL. You're replacing him with Sprague. It's going to be important that this unit can pass block well. Or, if they can't, that receiver improves and at the same time, Underwood has good pocket presence and is able to manipulate the pocket and maneuver it. Because if not, then you can get a young quarterback hit several times. That could affect his confidence, make him frustrated. That can limit what he does on the field, obviously. And this Michigan offense already is not a unit where they can compensate for bad offensive line play or for mediocre, even offensive line play. There are a few schools who can do that, a few schools who are on, I think, Michigan's schedule that can compensate in that way that Michigan can't. I would give you Oklahoma in week 2. Mateer is experienced enough, and Oklahoma's defense is good enough, and some of their receivers and weapons are good enough to where their offensive line could play poorly, and they could probably compensate for it better than Michigan's could. Nebraska in week 4, Raiola's already played with an offensive line that was not good at pass blocking, and he has better receivers. So I would imagine that on top of that, with him having experience and him being more mobile now than he was last season, transforming his body, that Nebraska could handle their offensive line having a shaky start or an off game compared to Michigan. I think USC could definitely do that. I think Michigan State with their schematics could. They nearly beat Michigan last year with an offensive line that was down to second and third stringers. Ohio State's an obvious example. We saw this last year. The Ohio State offensive line, contrary to what some have said was never this unit that mauled in the playoffs, they were just, look, they had 2 running backs that were almost Kenneth Walker like in terms of NFL traits. They had a wonderful quarterback in Will Howard, who probably had the best pocket awareness and presence of any Ryan Day quarterback. And they had elite wide receivers, including Jeremiah Smith. That's one of the most offensive line friendly supporting casts I can ever remember. And this was the case last year. Ohio State's offensive line could have played at that same crappy level they did against Michigan, or they did against Nebraska, or they did at times during the playoff, like against Texas. And they can still win games, if not dominate teams, if they scheme around it and if they have success through the passing attack and just good enough pass blocking. Michigan's not like any of these teams. They don't have the receivers that Oklahoma, Nebraska, USC, Michigan State, or Ohio State do. They do not have, I would say, the proven quarterback pedigree that Ohio State does, or the experience at quarterback that Nebraska, Oklahoma, USC, and Michigan State do. They probably don't have the tight ends at this point that most of these schools do. Certainly not Michigan State and Ohio State, and Nebraska, USC, and Oklahoma could be similar or better there. I would say that just given whether recent history or the athleticism of the groups or the style of ball played, I would say there's a good chance that many of the schools mentioned have better receiving running backs than Michigan does. And I would also say on top of that, I like Michigan State, Ohio State, and I would even say USC's tackles, I would say a little bit more than I do Michigan's. Nebraska, I would say, has more experience at tackle than Michigan does. Oklahoma probably does. I don't exactly know if that is something to be confident about, though. Their offensive line should be better, just like Michigan's should based on returning experience, but Oklahoma's offensive line was also much worse than Michigan's was last season. This unit I project to be probably a top 30, top 25 unit nationally. I think pretty similar to a lot of offensive lines on its schedule. They won't face an offensive line all season that is definitively better than them, and they will face several that are definitively worse. However, they will play several defensive lines that are superior. So I look at Oklahoma. Oklahoma's defensive line is way better than Michigan's offensive line. I would say the same thing with potentially, if everything pans out, possibly USC, possibly Ohio State. But right now I would say they're about punching even, if not a little bit worse than Michigan's offensive line. Just looking at Michigan's schedule again, it's one of the easier schedules for a top 15 roster. But you also have to think about if this team reaches the playoff, they're going to be playing a defensive line that's closer to Oklahoma's than any defensive line they play elsewhere in the regular season. And at that point, I would have concerns. So I like this group overall. I think it's going to be good. I think that it won't be the reason why Michigan loses games. I think that is more up to the passing offenses in the wide receivers or the coaching staff, or maybe parts of the defense, like the secondary that could be thin at depth and were also shaky last year. However, this is not a unit that I'm going to pick to play at a 2021, 2022, 2023 Michigan O-line level. I need to see it in order to believe that this unit can play at that level. Thank you for watching College Football with Sam. Make sure that you've liked the video, subscribed to the channel, hit the notification bell for the channel and team playlists and podcasts in the description, joined the free Discord server where we talk college football 24/7, and have commented your thoughts down below. Check out the description for any ways you can support the channel monetarily. Everything else I've asked you to do is completely free, and your support means the world to me. We're trying to become the next big thing on college football YouTube. 6-figure subscribers, maybe 1 million one day. I think we can do that. And also check out any videos or playlists, anything in these columns right here, where there will be videos and playlists. Yeah, you get the point. Have a fantastic day, and I will see you in the next one.